Roland Hulme, welcome back to Suit Up the Podcast.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted. You have some pretty amazing people on your podcast, so
Thank you.
I'm delighted to be among them.
Absolutely. I regard you as one of the most amazing people I've had on the show, in part because, quite by accident, for those watching on YouTube, you will see Roland is wearing a red Henley and I am wearing a green Henley, which, since normally I'm wearing a suit on the show, was quite by accident. And yet, somehow, as we're recording this near the Christmas time, we are coordinated for the holiday season.
Absolutely, red and green
Red and
should never
green.
be seen. No, actually, they should be seen. It's red and blue should never. No, blue and green should never be seen. I don't know. I forget.
That's okay. One of the things we're just generally chatting about on the show today is we've got the new year here. And one of the big things for me this last year has been, okay, I've written these really fun adventure stories. How can I actually approach my writing as a business? How can I work on making sure that I'm putting the intention of this is a thing into it? And I think you are one of the best guys that I've chatted with just generally in my start as a writer here, that you have approached this as a business. You've approached this as this is a thing to make money slash I'm using my creativity here to delight and entertain people. So I figured we'd have a fun conversation just talking about the craft of writing and kind of what our goals of 2026 are.
Oh, well, I really look forward to that. And yeah, I've wanted to be a writer since I was like 8 or 9 years old. But even then, I was like, I want to be a writer who makes his living being a writer. And
Hmm.
that I have definitely been up there making 14 grand a month in my book royalties, but also I've gone down a bit. There are challenges.
Hmm.
Writing, I was speaking to somebody just the other day, and they said when you're a writer, you're hunting minnows basically, and if you hunt enough
Yes.
minnows, you're going to eat well. But people who want to make money hunt whales. So part of it is this pathological thing that we have is we want to be writers. And if you want to be a writer who also makes money being a writer, you have to perhaps approach it in a different way from those of us who just want to write books and just get them out there. And I
Hmm.
remember your writing career has been so fascinating to follow because the early books that you published, like your romance novels, like uh, Reason of Romance, like you wrote those almost for like the thrill of the game. And I
Hmm.
loved that and I respected that so much. Reason of Romance I especially liked because you got the tropes of romance and you flipped the gender roles. And I was like, this is a man who understands what romance books are in such an interesting way, and he flipped them just for the pleasure of it. And it was really enjoyable to read that because you weren't approaching it from a point of like, I want to make money. You were approaching it from I want to tell a story. I want to craft
Hmm.
in writing, and that was just so satisfying to read. But at the end of the day, yeah, we want to write and we want to, as the Joker said, if you're good at something, never do it for free.
So true. Well, okay, I heard someone put it this way. Building an audience is literally selling one book at a time. And that's helped me approach it, but you are very correct. It is minnows to whales. Like if you're trying to make money, you should be doing something like stockbrokering, not writing. But we
Renting
love
washing
writing.
machines, that's the thing. Apparently, you buy
Yes.
a couple of washing machines and rent them out, and you can make ridiculous amounts of money. So,
It's okay, that's the thing that's genuinely appalling. I saw a have you heard of Scott Galloway?
Scott Galloway, not.
He wrote a fantastic book called The Four, which was why Amazon, Apple, or Google are going to become the first like trillion-dollar company. Anyway, point being, he's written a couple of stuff since then. He's gotten a couple good podcasts. I saw him make a comment once that was for every person that you see telling you to chase your dreams, they are someone who has made probably inherited wealth based on boring,
Yeah.
unsexy businesses. The sexier the business, the less money you can make at it because it is a more crowded field. Now, I don't know if we'd all say that writers are sexy. I think that two of us are perfect examples of being incredibly sexy and attractive writers. Uh,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, Roland, if you don't mind my asking, like what do you want to see in your 2026? Are there any particular habits, routines, or things that you're introducing to make 2026 a good writing year?
My biggest challenge, I think, for the last couple of years has simply been writing, because
Hmm.
I got to a certain extent with my biker series that
Hmm.
I had got myself into almost like a Marvel Avengers Endgame situation where I had so many characters and
Hmm.
so many things, and they all converged in Las Vegas at the same time. And then I'm like, what am I gonna do with all this? Because just as you said, you're writing one book at a time.
Hmm.
Every single romance book that you write should be about a particular couple getting together. And yes,
Yes.
they could exist. I mean, the way you make it work is they exist in this larger world with all of the other characters from your other books, but you
Hmm.
have to be disciplined and focused on this one particular individual couple. So if somebody picks up this book and they haven't read any other of your books, they can still enjoy it as a story. And I found that quite challenging because I had so many other characters with so much going on. I literally wrote 40,000 words of this book, and then I was like, threw it all out because I'm like, this is all about other characters from other books, whereas I should be
Hmm.
focusing on the characters from this book. And then also, I think I had a lot of stories that were going on in there. Like I was like, okay, we're gonna have the CIA in Mexico working with the drug cartels, and we're gonna have like politicians plotting assassinations and secret military things behind in the United States. And then all of these things started coming true in the news, and I'm like, oh, this is. It's like suddenly, what am I going to do with this? So I kind of lost the faith a bit, but my big first thing, I have been writing again. It is because when you want to
Hmm.
write books, if you want to make money from writing books, you need to go where people are paying money for books. And
Hmm.
so that's why I wrote romance, because romance readers, they are wonderful people. They can read a book a day. They're
Hmm.
voracious readers. So if I can write a book that they enjoy, they will pay me money. And I feel that's a good exchange. So
Beautiful.
I'm writing at the moment. You might think this sounds ridiculous, a monster romance, because that is a very in thing at the moment.
Hmm.
You've probably heard of these. So the other thing that you have to do as a writer is you want to write stuff you enjoy writing and that is meaningful to you. So when I was a kid, we used to go on vacation in the islands in Greece, and I love World War II history, and I love killing Nazis. So I'm writing a book set on an island in the 1940s in Greece where the Nazis come, and there's this brave young lady who romances some mythical Greek satyrs, and they kill all the Nazis together. And I'm
Good.
like, it's just that point of absurdity where I'm like, I'm really enjoying writing this.
That's amazing because I feel like this is one of those things where this sounds like it could be a play by Aeschylus.
Yes.
You are adding to the Greek canon of literature.
Wow, and it's funny because it's just as you were saying when you were writing your book. So you find out so much about the period that you're writing.
Hmm.
It's like I vacationed in Greece and I loved Greece. It's wonderful. Then you look what happened in the 1940s during World War II, and the Italians coming, and the Italians weren't so bad, and then the Germans came and the Germans killed all the Italians. The Germans were complete bastards, and I'm like, wow, this is all pretty intense stuff. So it's a great playground to write in. And then you think like
Hmm.
I'm writing a story. It's got the romance elements people like, but also it's got the elements I think that should be in a story, which is killing
Hmm.
Nazis. I think that's a very good element, always welcome in any story.
Yes,
So yeah, I regained, I think, some of the passion for telling a story.
that's awesome. Well, I think that you're bringing up something that's really important for the craft of writing, that stories, it's personally, this is something I struggle with, and that's the reason I'm highlighting it. It's one thing to create the characters and have the characters tension. I'm the brain person that's really easy to just tunnel into this self-contained, there's nothing else in the greater world. Real stories, real life has stuff external. There are other factors. There's that in this particular case, we have that threat of danger from the outside that is also there. And that adds tension to the interpersonal dynamics and helps fuel and stress those dynamics because in real relationships, two people still bring in the stress that they get from the external world. They still have the things that just because the girl is not necessarily upset at the guy. She's annoyed because of all the other stuff going on in her life that then she brings into that conversation with the dude. And he's like, what the hell? I had no idea. And the same thing happens in reverse, where the guy's like, work sucks and inadvertently takes it out on her.
Oh, I think that's, yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't, you have these, as you start building the characters, and if you put them in a really well built world, then yeah, they get these. That's almost one of the things that makes romance work is they each have these threads pulling at them and pulling them apart. And
Hmm.
it's like to get them together involves quite a lot of work and process and going through things. It's almost like therapy in book form.
Well, isn't that why we write? Because writing is in theory cheaper than therapy.
Absolutely. What is it they're making these TikTok videos? It's therapy dupe. It's like you should go to therapy. It's like, nah, I'll just write a couple of novels, it'll be fine.
Yeah, like that's exactly what I've done. I've joked that my worst book is the one I wrote post breakup, and that is I have taken that for what it is, and it is my asterisk on that book. Anytime I look at it and I go, I need to give myself a little grace, and that's why it's the one that I'll quietly ignore.
I was going to say, which one was that?
Pros and procrastination.
Uh, yeah, that makes sense, actually. That makes sense. I can see
Yeah,
that. I can
Roland,
see that. It's like click, like, hmm. But but I mean, I love that as well. That's part of the thing. It's like, who was it who said we writers, we transmogrify pain into fiction?
hmm
And part of it is you read a book and the characters are going through pain that you might also have read, and that makes the character resonate with you. That makes you have a
hmm
connection with the character, and that makes the book important to you. Like James Bond, the reason so many of us young men, or I'm not quite so young, the reason so many of us
Young at
men
heart.
enjoy the James Bond books is he's kind of a lonely, broken person who had rough things happen to him. He's a lot more sensitive, the literary James Bond, than
hmm
perhaps we give him credit for. And so we read it and it resonates with us. We're reading him like, okay, I get this character. He experiences the same things that I do.
I just finished reading John Pearson's the biography of James Bond, the authorized
Yes, the
edition.
unauthorized one.
It is so much fun.
Yeah.
It's weird because I'm able to do this disconnect where if you enjoy Bond as a character in the Fleming canon, you can either go, this is the dark story beneath, or you can say this is a wholly separate entity. I love I went from reading With a Mind to Kill
Yeah.
to the authorized biography, and it was just fascinating to see that element of where Bond craves danger weave between both of them. And I realized this is something of just because Pearson was also Fleming's biographer. I
Yeah.
think it was a fascinating interplay to see how much, because he weaves Fleming himself into the story. You see how much he transposes from Fleming's biography. But one of the things that I think is keenly different between the two is that Fleming wanted to live a life of danger and didn't in large ways, whereas
Yeah.
Bond wants to live a life of danger and constantly is in it. And it's interesting to see the interplay. But I think that you're right. This is fiction. This is like dating back from we were talking about Greek literature before. Isn't it Aristotle or Socrates wrote like the that book on like prose, like the OG this is what literature is book. And there's that concept of catharsis that we get this feeling of just relief and satisfaction at the end of a story because we've experienced a part of what that emotion is.
Yes. And the whole point of a good story is like a circle where
Hmm
the hero ends up where he started, except he has fundamentally changed.
hmm
And I think that's why it is almost like therapy, because we go through that. We experience the change along with the hero, and then we end up in the same place, which is, we pick up a copy of a book and we read it, and we start the book in one particular place, like our armchair, drinking a pint of beer, and then we finish our book, and okay, the beer might have gone, but we're still in the armchair. So just like the hero, we end up in the same place, but we have been fundamentally changed by the adventure we have just gone on.
hmm There's a this isn't Joseph Campbell's hero's journey that at the end of the story he returns back to the village, but he has the gold or the treasure or the knowledge.
Yes,
And I like to think that that's the way we experience writing, is that at the end of writing a book, Churchill put it that writing is overcoming a monster. It's like you have to fight the beast and then slay it and then hurl it before the public. And
yes.
I love that idea because each book is a different kind of monster to me. I don't know if you've experienced this. I feel like every story I write has different challenges. The process, even though I try to keep the process the same, I find that I have to do different tactics. I have to use the overall strategy is the same, but the individual little things I have to do to make myself right or to make the story come together requires different tools or different instincts or it's the same reason why James Bond fights a new villain each story, but even though the plot, Bond faces abnormal thing to the British mindset, gingers or
Yes.
Chinamen. This is at the end of the story, it's still a different way of going about it.
I like that a lot. And when you look through your collection of books, you just said Prose and Procrastination was written after a breakup. I mean, I look at my books and there's like, oh, that's the book that I wrote while I was struggling with, do I want to be a writer or do I want to have a corporate job? And it's like, and this is the book that I was right when I was going through a particularly bad spot in my marriage. And it's kind of interesting
Hmm.
to look at how you dealt, yeah, instead of going to therapy, we dealt with our deep-seated problems by writing a book about it. But it did help us in the end. We were like, yeah.
Yes. Well, I think that again, that's part of the joy of writing is that we have been able to take this fire on the
Yeah.
inside in some ways and pour it into what does this story mean? And I think that's why writing resonates. And that's why you and I could take the exact same plot and write two entirely different stories. I love that story of they were going to remake the Thomas Crown Affair, but
Yes.
it became two different movies. It became Entrapment and it
Yep.
became the actual Thomas Crown Affair remake
With Pierce Brosnan though.
with Pierce Brosnan. It's
Yeah.
fundamentally started the same concept, but became two wildly different projects.
So I've always wanted to try that with a writer. It's like we sit down together and we drink a few cocktails and we come up with the plot, and then you both go off and write entirely different books, and then you see what they are.
Okay, true story. My wife and I tried doing that with short stories.
Ah,
When it was one of our first trips after getting married. We went to San Francisco, which is definitely part of the reason why San Francisco is the ultimate destination
beautiful city,
in
beautiful city.
um, the Mitch Mayhew stories.
Yeah.
That we both said, well, what about? I had this idea. What if a couple tried to take over? Just, you know what? Let's try to take over a kingdom and just make that's the plot. I started writing this full, complicated, like backstory to these characters that are thieves and scoundrels. She has started writing this beautiful little, like Agatha Christie style Tommy and Tuppence type story that I didn't make it very far in mine. She is like 5,000 words into it. It's like I might turn this into a full book. And
Oh,
I'm like, it's so neat because again, that premise of we have the same idea and go about it in two entirely different ways based on what our experiences are. I started to write something that was very white collar-esque, very Thomas Crown Affair. She's a big Agatha Christie fan and loves Tommy and Tuppence, Secret Adversary, Partners in Crime. So that's the avenue she kind of took.
I love that because we each have our own aesthetics.
Hmm.
There's that scene in the Live and Let Die where James Bond is on that boat and he says that Quarrel he and I share the same hairbrush because they have a hairbrush that opens up and it's a radio transmitter. But there are people like you and I think we kind of are on the same wavelength. We share the same hairbrush. And it's kind of interesting when you meet people who can have this who aren't on that, but you can get the
Hmm.
story and where they how they put it together.
There's a quote by C.S. Lewis that I absolutely adore, and I think is absolutely true of you and I. Um, that when we meet someone that we become friends, friendship is that moment you realize the other person sees the world the same way you do in a lot of ways. And I remember I joked, I was explaining when we first met your story to someone else, and they're like, "Is this the Ginger Terrence?" And I just thought, it's funny because we do have a lot of things that are similar in how our outlook is. I think that if we were to scan each other's bookshelves, we'd see many of the same books, perhaps even
Yes,
the
I
same
imagine we
editions,
would.
which I just want to quickly shout out here. High Point, for those who have not yet read it, is an absolutely delightful story it's a solid romance novel, but it's also an action book. I think that you have mastered this in your writing, where again, there's the threat of danger, there's the adventure that's going on, while at the same point, there are these characters that are trying to get closer together, but also feeling pulled apart by the circumstances.
The interesting thing is I'm very much into if you want to write a successful romance book, you have to study romance books, read them all, and there's a formula they follow. And there's normally in a romance book, at the end of the first act, the hero and the heroine have a soft breakup and then get back together. And then there's the big breakup.
Hmm.
And they have to overcome something major to get back together. And in traditional romance, a lot of the women, when they're writing romance novels like that, they will have it as an interpersonal thing that breaks up the
Hmm.
hero and the heroine. So it's like, he decides to move to Greece or move to Russia, or she becomes an astronaut or something like that. There's a big thing where they choose to go a different way. And I don't like that so much because to me, that's kind of like it's difficult to write because it's
Hmm.
them breaking up for interpersonal reasons. Whereas what you can do if you base it around an action thing is you can have an external force break them up. And
Hmm.
the thing they have to come is the external thing of, oh, I've been kidnapped by the bad guy and he needs to rescue me, or he's been kidnapped by the bad guy and I need to rescue him. And I enjoy that because you can follow the beats of the romance book, but also I find it much more enjoyable to write about an external force separating them than their interpersonal problems. And
Yeah.
that's the way I overcome that particular challenge while remaining loyal to the spirit of what a romance novel is.
I think that that's actually a really great get around of the issue. I don't know about you, when you watch the movie and you're like, why are they doing this? It's literally just they need to talk.
Yes,
Which
that's absolutely it.
I will say to that point, having just celebrated my first anniversary fairly recently, the I watch some sitcoms now when the couples fight with a whole
Yeah.
different perspective than I did before. And yeah, sometimes it is neither side wants to actually communicate, but I think that in large part, most people, when it is the stakes are the stakes in the story, I watch How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days and I love it, but still go, really, they just need to have a conversation about
Yeah.
this. It would have been fairly simple.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a lot of them. And I mean, I don't want to sound sexist, but I think there are some times that some women will create problems that don't necessarily need to exist because of the things that they're thinking inside their brains. And men don't necessarily communicate as they should do because yes. So I enjoy not having to focus on that, and you can put the action stuff to pull them apart.
I am curious, like, is there a action set piece that you haven't that like has been looming in your mind where you're like, this would be fun to incorporate in a story at some point? Like Nazis, I'm guessing have been on your list for a while, and you're
Yes.
excited to finally like the Indiana Jones of it all is like hyping you.
I actually have one of the next books in my motorcycle romance series that I really wanted to write. I think introducing other people can always make things interesting. And I've got
Hmm.
a couple who got together in a previous book and they start off this book and they're together and then they do separate because he wants to clear his name, so he has to go off on
Hmm.
his own journey. And then she is still legit in the eyes of the law, so she uses her legitimacy and her political things to get somewhere, but meets someone else who then
Oh.
becomes interesting to her. And it's kind of that's I kind of like I think adding other people to the dynamic between an established couple is a
Hmm.
really interesting way to make things fresh and bring it's always difficult with a romance book. You have a couple and you want to get them together to have their happily ever after.
Hmm.
When you write about a couple who's already been established and you're revisiting them again, you kind of have to break them up every time you do. And so
Hmm.
that's an interesting way to break them up, but then give them an opportunity to get back together.
I mean, when I wrote Diamonds in Denver, one of the first things I
Yeah.
did was I wanted to introduce Lucy Walcott, this
Yes, and I
ex
love that.
extra character. It wasn't that I necessarily expected it was going to go anywhere other than its its relationship dynamics. The moment you
Yeah.
include a third person, you create nine dynamics instead of
Yeah.
just two. And that exponential relationship tree of writing. And I think that's where having a cast of characters is a fun thing to bring to any story or series.
And I found that very interesting in this book because to a certain extent Lucy gels with Mitch much
Yes.
more easily than Kathleen does. And it's kind of and it kind of forces him to be like, okay, this is so easy with Lucy, but my feelings are towards Kathleen. So it's like that creates the conflict, which is what
Mhm.
all stories are about.
I have written down like a note in my grand like Mitch Mayhew folder on my phone, and I think Lucy is going to show up again in the future just because she was such a fun character to write.
Now, the interesting thing I've noticed is when I'm writing for my audience, which tend to be women, you don't want to have a dynamic in which the guy is having to choose between two women
Hmm.
because the readers are like, okay, no, he should only be choosing between one woman. So if
Hmm.
you're going to introduce a new character, he has to be a man who makes the woman doubt her relationship with the hero or something like that, which is just it's just an
Hmm.
interesting thing to throw in.
Well, I think that again, that's one of the fascinating things about, I think you've done a really great job of bring a great deal of study and understanding of your genre and your craft. We were talking earlier about Raymond Benson as one of our favorite writers just because he is such a craftsman when it comes to he knows how to write a good story. And
Absolutely.
I think that you have brought a great deal of that similar craftsman mentality to what's right. This is what the genre is. So what can I do within the context? But then also, how can I twist it just a little bit? And I admire that about your writing, is I think you've done a really great job of writing within the genre, but giving it a little extra oomph.
Well, that is very kind of you to say. I'm very cognizant of the fact that I write romance novels, and my audience are mostly made up of women who read gazillions of other romance novels written by talented authors. And I'm like, if I want them to pay money to read my books, then
Hmm.
they deserve me to study their
Hmm.
books that they read and respect what it is that they expect out of a book and respect those tropes and deliver it on them. That's really why I approach it that way. I want them to read the book and be like, yeah, he may be a guy writing romance novels, and generally romance readers are very, very open-minded about that.
Yeah.
But I want them to feel at the end like I've respected their genre that they enjoy reading.
Hmm. I don't know about you. I feel like anytime I pick up a book, I really don't care who the author is, providing it's a good story. Usually, there are very rare exceptions, but quite honestly, whoever it is, I just want to be entertained. Give
Yeah.
me that thrilling adventure or the vibe that I want. And I think that's the thing that I've taken most to heart over this last year of writing is trying to figure out, okay, this is what the vibes of the story are. How can I synthesize? I think this is something you've done really well because hats off to you. You wrote the description of One Man's Treasure and you captured really well. These are the vibes of the story. And that I'm learning, again, it's just a different part of the writing craft. How can I communicate to an audience? This is the emotion, this is the excitement, these are the thrills or titillation that you can expect from the tale.
Yeah, I write a lot of blurbs for other authors because I think it's really difficult to write a blurb for your own book because you're so into it. You're so in the book that, and there are threads that might be guiding you through writing the book that are different to what people will experience when they're reading it. So I think having an outsider's perspective when you write a blurb for a book often helps. And I mean, One Man's Treasure was just, yeah,
Oh,
it
thank you.
was easy for me to get into it.
I think that One Man's Treasure is one of those stories where I'm like, I know Roland will like this. Like I didn't
Yeah.
question it for a moment because I'm like, this is the genre that we adore in so many ways. I'm curious, for your own writing, how do you approach writing blurbs for your books?
I will say that I kind of have a formula. It's a very loose formula, but it is. You set off with like, okay, you establish who your main character is in their first line or something, and you have to give them something that makes whoever's reading the blurb like hooks them. There's
Hmm.
something about that character. So like if you're writing, a young adult thing, you have to have your young female hero, and maybe she's an outsider, or maybe she's clumsy, or maybe there's something where people are like, oh, that sounds like me. And the second one, you have to establish what it is their need, what it is they're chasing after. And then the third, it's almost like they're chasing this. What goes wrong?
Hmm.
And then the fourth part, and the fourth part is setting up a question. It's almost like a blurb. Doesn't cover the whole book. It just covers the
Hmm.
first act. And your first act
Yes.
of your book should always end on like the big inciting incident that is the big question mark that is going to throw everything into uncertainty. And that's where you end your blurb. And the fifth part is just to be like, hey, this is a young adult romance novel that is filled with action adventure, and somebody in the Des Moines, Iowa said it's pretty good. You should read it. So there are five like specific segments of a blurb, and each one has a specific purpose. And I think the most important one is that fourth one, which is where you establish a question that
Hmm.
whoever's reading the blurb is like, I now need to read the book to figure out what the answer to this question that the author has posed is.
Hmm. Which honestly is a great way of, I remember reading John Truby's Elements of Story.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things I really appreciate about his structure for like how to come up with a tale was you start with like a single line, then you go from just the one sentence idea to then you write the actual like plot-ish, which should only be like two or three sentences. And that's where you should really have that question. This is the big thing that drives the rest of the story. And that helps you kind of narrow down on what is your inciting incident. Because without that, then, without a strong question, you don't have something to really propel you through the plot. In the case of a lot of romance, it's will they, won't they? In the case of action adventure, it's will they overcome these obstacles or these odds?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can do a good job of like hooking the reader of your blurb into like, hey, this is the main character. The main character's got something in common with you, so you're invested in them, and then put them in an impossible situation of like, uh, yeah, is your brother's, I don't know, your brother's been kidnapped by pirates, but your girlfriend wants to go home. Like, what are you going to do? And if you have done a good job at making people get a little bit invested with the character that you've introduced in your blurb, and then you've got that question posed to them, they're like, well, what is he going to do? I have to read the book to find out now.
One other thing you've done last year, that you've done a couple of YouTube videos on now, is you've been selling direct on your.
Yes.
How is that going? Like, do you mind giving an update and just kind of explaining what that looks like by comparison to selling it through Amazon?
It is a lot more. It is not for the faint of heart. I will say that. So I mean, I've been doing this for a bunch of years, and it used to be you could publish your book on Amazon, and you could go through various process and be
Hmm.
successful. And you can still do that. There is still an absolutely solid route towards if you write really good books and you go through the process, you can be successful on Amazon. But it's become a lot more complicated because if you look at
Hmm.
the your book's product page, it is now covered with ads for other books.
Yes.
So I find it very frustrating to spend money on advertising to send people to my product page on Amazon, where immediately there are adverts for 20 other books. And
Hmm.
the other thing that is really, really annoying is there is a deal between Google and Apple that
Hmm.
any transaction made on one of their apps on one of their devices, they get 30%. So if you pick up your phone and go to the Amazon app and look up an ebook right now, you can find the ebook you want to buy, and the chances are you will not be able to purchase it on the app on your phone. And
Yep.
considering like 80% of all the people you advertise to on Facebook are on their mobile device, you are sending people to your product page where they cannot buy your book.
Yeah.
And yes, you can make it work, but I'm like, why am I doing that when I could send them to
Hmm.
my website and get them to buy the book directly from me? So it took me a long time to do, and it's not necessarily easy. I'm sure anybody who's at least as smart as me can make it work. But now I direct people to my website where they can buy the books directly off me. And it's much more challenging, and I've had good runs with it and bad runs with it, but
Hmm.
it's so satisfying. There's a every time I get a sale, my phone goes ka-ching, and I just get this biggest dopamine hit, and I'm just like,
Hmm.
yes. So I'm all in on selling direct now.
Well, I think that's interesting. So we've talked about this before. I have a background in agriculture, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating how I watched the direct consumer market for food products really take off. Farmers markets, CSA boxes, all these things. We were talking about a bit on the last conversation we had, the idea of the Mitch Mayhew Club, where I'd send people, they pay X, they get
Yes.
this book every month, they get one of these. I think that things like that is where a lot of the market is going to start pivoting, is this direct consumer model, simply because Amazon is an institution now. It is
Yeah.
the same as going into any bookstore. And I think a lot of people want to have, they want a closer relationship with a writer, which when you're an indie writer, definitely like maximizing that personal connection is what keeps people buying your books. Scott McCrae, great writer we've had on the show before, he made a comment that when he does book signings, he doesn't make money off the books. But what he does is any person that buys, if a person buys a book from you, you sign it, they're probably going to buy every other book from you just because they
Yes.
feel like that instant connection. It feels like a real relationship. I think there's a version of that that exists here in the web where when someone buys your book direct from you, they enter your ecosystem. You then also have the opportunity to potentially direct market to them. Like there's just this whole avenue of opportunity that you don't have when the customer just buys it on Amazon, which we love it when they do. To be clear, feel free to go on Amazon and buy Roland's books. Feel free to go on Amazon and buy my books. But if you get them direct, it just establishes that relationship and it draws people closer to your brand, your values, your story.
You're absolutely right. So the advantage I had moving to the direct sales model is I had a 12 book series. And so what I do is I direct people to a page where they can buy the first 6 books in the series all at
Hmm.
once. And immediately
Awesome.
that makes it a much more economically viable situation because instead of selling one book where I might
Hmm.
make a $2 profit on it, I'm now selling 6 books where I make an $18 profit.
Hmm.
But also, exactly as you said, with Amazon, you are just sending people blindly to your product page on Amazon. They may buy your book, they may not buy your book, but that's it. You don't have any information about that at all. Whereas if they buy it from me, from my Shopify store, I get their email address and I can
Hmm.
build up a mailing list. I can use that mailing list to make a better advertising model. I can email those people directly and offer them other books. And yeah, you create your own marketing system, your own ecosystem, as you said, which Amazon does not give you that opportunity.
Hmm.
That being said, I've noticed that every time I spend money advertising my books directly, my sales on Amazon will increase by exactly the same margin. Just because people are seeing adverts for these
Hmm.
books, and then the next time they go to Amazon, they're like, "Oh, I heard about Simone Scarlett." Type it in, bring up the book, buy that. So Amazon exists really well in
Hmm.
conjunction with your direct sales. There's the challenge that you have to take your book out of Kindle Unlimited to sell directly.
Hmm.
And I used to make an awful lot of my money through Kindle Unlimited. And there's also on Amazon, you'll get the book reviews and your book
Hmm.
can rise in the ranks. So with my next book, when I publish it, I'm probably going to start off on Amazon and I'm going
Yeah.
to push really hard to get reviews and maybe push really hard on Kindle Unlimited for a bit. But then when the next book comes out, maybe I'll like pull it off and start selling it directly or something like that. I had the advantage with my biker series that they've been up on Amazon for years. So, I have a series that exists there that's got thousands of reviews.
Hmm.
So people can buy them directly off me, or if they then want to go and buy them off Amazon, they've got a really attractive package on Amazon to choose from. And when you're starting from scratch, it's kind of like, do I go to
Hmm.
Amazon to build up like this prestigious book appearance there, or do I try and sell directly so I can make money directly? And it's a balancing act.
Hmm. Well, and I think that to your point, the thing that you have done really well and that has made this transition of incorporating this into your sales model work is that you have built a body of work. Like that's the thing that I keep holding on to is I want to build the body of work, and I know that is what will make everything easier. Selling, I think I started selling more copies of Unwanted Passenger when I sold came out with Diamonds in Denver because
Absolutely,
all
yeah.
of a sudden there's a sequel. Like just that alone has helped. And I know that continuing the series is going to do that. And that's why it's awesome that you've built this book series that now every book helps market itself.
And I think that's very important as writers. We first of all we want to write our books because we want to write a book, and we often think about it of like, what book do I want to write? I'll write it, and then when you're finished, we're like, okay, how am I going to get people to buy this? And my model is always, I've learned to be like, okay, what books do people want to buy? What
Hmm.
books do I want to write? Where do those two lines cross? And then hopefully
Hmm.
that's where the magic happens. But
Hmm.
I always think now as a writer, you need to think about how am I going to market these books effectively? And just sticking them on Amazon, that's not necessarily the answer. I love the idea of, yeah, you create a body of work, you create 12 of these, and then you start advertising for the Mitch Mayhew book club, where it's like joining Patreon or something like that.
Hmm.
Every month, $15 gets taken out of your bank account, but you get delivered to your door one of these books and you read it, and the next month you get the next one, the next month you get the
Hmm.
next one. You end up with all of them on your bookshelf. It's I don't know if when you were a kid whether they had magazines that came with like you used to buy a magazine and it
Yes.
would come build your own car or something and it
Hmm.
would have like one piece of the car that you put on the side, and once you bought all 12 magazines you had enough to put the car together. And there's a certain element to that I think that we've forgotten with Amazon, but I think is coming back in a big way.
I'm really excited. Like again, I think that there's a lot of opportunity as digital spaces evolve. I think the relationship part of relationship marketing is going to be more of a factor, especially like I said for indie authors. I think that
Yeah.
that's the next through line. Roland, this has been a delightful conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
All you have to do is put in my name, Roland Hume, all one word, and I will show up everywhere. I will turn up like a bad penny. So I would just recommend doing that, and we'll see what the winds of Google are deciding to throw up. But probably my books come up. My books under my own name on Amazon don't look that impressive because I've actually written the majority of my work under a pen name. But that's changing as we go ahead. So I don't know. Follow along
Awesome.
to see where the winds of
Ooh.
2026 will take me.
I'm excited for 2026, both to see what you write and what I write. I think it's going to be a great year for both of us. I will link all of your info in the show notes so people can go directly to that Instagram, website, Amazon, all the things. Thanks for joining the show, Roland.
Thank you so much for having me.